الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد قال الله تعالى في القرآن الكريم بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. My apologies for being late today, but alhamdulillah for LA traffic. This is my first quote unquote New Year's khutbah, right? I've sat, where you are all sitting for many New Year's khutbah, and I'm always sitting there thinking, okay, what is the khatib going to say next? What is the khatib going to tell me should be my New Year's resolution? And then there's also this idea of walking away from the masjid saying, well, what is this whole thing about New Year's anyways? This is not from our tradition, right? So I wanted to start today by speaking about New Year's, just generally speaking, right? Which is that, first of all, a khutbah is a weekly reminder, right? New Year's is kind of like a yearly reminder. A khutbah is a weekly reminder. It's something where we are remembering Allah and remembering things about our religion that we can put into practice on a weekly basis, right? So inshallah, at the very least, whether or not we're going to think of it as a New Year's thing or not, right? Inshallah, today serves as a reminder to myself first and foremost, and then to all of us as something that we can do to refresh ourselves on a weekly basis, if not, then perhaps on a yearly basis, inshallah. So, inshallah, today, let's entertain what we can do as a weekly reminder. Perhaps as a New Year's, if we want to use that word, resolution, right? So a lot of things that come to our minds is, okay, I could lose a few extra pounds, inshallah I can get that new job, make some more money, inshallah I can stop, I can get out of, paying rent to the slumlords, and inshallah one day get my own house, right? Inshallah this year I'm going to get married for sure this time, right? There are so many different things we can do, quote unquote, as a resolution, but, also at the same time, these things can be seen maybe as materialistic, right? So let's think of more of like maybe a deen-related resolution, right? Okay, first things first, my 5 pillars, okay, let me get on my 5 daily prayers inshallah more. I gotta make sure, maybe I can up it one and Fajr in the masjid. Fajr and Isha in the masjid, whatever it may be, right? These could be some of my New Year's resolutions. Or, inshallah, I'm going to give more zakah or more sadaqah this year than I gave last year. Or perhaps this Ramadan, I'm locking in, right? 10 days i'tikaf, and, the whole 9 yards, right? Whatever it is. Or maybe it's perhaps to, control my temper this year, right? Or perhaps to, memorize more Quran, right? All of these things that we're mentioning, right, whether it's the more materialistic things or the more deen-related things, can still be seen in a way as ibadah. But where do we look to know whether it's ibadah or not? Right? Why are you trying to get more money this year? Is it because you want that Mercedes in your driveway? Right? Or is it so that you can provide for your family? If you're trying to provide for your family and you're trying to make more money, that's ibadah. Right? Why are you paying thousands of dollars every year to go to school to get a higher education? Maybe you're trying to become a doctor so you can give back to your community. That's a form of ibadah. That's a form of worship. Right? Whether it's the more deen-focused ones or even seemingly the materialistic ones, it goes back to what? Our intentions. Right? إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Our actions are by our intentions, and we get rewarded based on our intentions. Okay, well, let's talk about this phrase ibadah a little bit more. Right? Quote unquote, acts of worship. Right? What is worship? Right? If I earn a living to provide for my family, and that's an act of worship, what do we mean by this word worship? right? When my parents tell me to do something and I obey them, that's ibadah, that's an act of worship. Am I worshipping my parents? A'udhu billah, no. Right? I'm worshipping Allah. And because of Allah, because of my worship to Allah, I'm obeying my parents. So let's think about this more in terms of, if we're looking at a New Year's resolution or something like this, trying to better ourselves in general, right? And we're talking about it in terms of ibadah, in terms of worship. Let's stop focusing on the things we want to do, and let's start asking the question, why are we doing them? Right? What does it mean to worship Allah? Well, if we obey our parents, but then one day they tell us to do something haram, I have to draw the line there. But wait a second, I thought obedience to parents was worship. Under certain conditions. Right? So where do you draw the line in the sand of what is worship and what is not worship? It goes back again to intention, definitions, defining terms. Right? Why are we worshiping? What does it mean to worship? Right? So the foundational definition of being a Muslim, right, of the religion of Islam, as we know, is Islam is submission. Right? Islam means submission. But Muslim, right, is that the doer of submission, right? The one who submits. What are we submitting to? We're submitting the will to the will of Allah. What are we submitting? We're submitting our will. Right? Allah gave us our free will. We are submitting, worshipping is submitting our will to that of Allah. We're doing what Allah wants over what we want, to break it down. Right? Okay, so let me give you an example. So some years back, during Hurricane Katrina, right, there were a bunch of homes that were demolished and ruined, and people lost their homes, and the government might have been slow to respond and react with aid, but some people stepped up, right? Some celebrities stepped up, right? There was a headline that Oprah, she built with her own money a brand new neighborhood for people who lost their homes due to Hurricane Katrina, right? We say, mashallah. Of course, that's a good deed, right? There's this general idea of doing good, right? This year, for my New Year's resolution, I want peace and love to the world. Okay, generally, these things are all good. But what about the intention, right? Why are we doing them? I'm not saying anything about Oprah. That's not my place here. That's between her and Allah. But the question is why is she doing that, right? Is she doing it for more praise from people? Is she doing it to further put herself on a pedestal? Right? Is she doing it for a self-serving purpose, or is she doing it as an act of worship to her Lord? Right? Whatever benefit you get from that, right, is going to be different based on whether it's an act of worship or an act for some other purpose. So a teacher asked his student one time, he said, if you could summarize the entire Quran in terms of a theme, what would that theme be? And to save you, for the sake of time, I'm going to speed up, inshallah. But the answer was that the theme of the Quran can be summarized into two main points. The first point is that the Quran is telling us to accept Allah as master and accept ourselves as slaves. Right? That's what worship is. Right? We don't worship, an ant. We don't worship something that doesn't deserve to be worshipped. We worship the master. We worship the creator. We worship that which is worthy of worship. Right? The second point, so the first point is to accept Allah as master and accept ourselves as servants. The second point is to accept that all guidance is only beneficial to people who accept themselves as slaves. So, to Allah, of course. But accepting guidance, right? So if I understand why I'm here on this world, who I'm meant to worship, then the reason why I'm building that neighborhood is because I'm trying to do a good deed. Why? Because Allah guided me to what is good and what is not good. And I'm doing this to worship my Lord. I realize that that is the guidance that I'm trying to get. I'm receptive to good guidance, to true guidance, when I accept my relationship between myself and Allah. He is my master, and I am His slave. I am His servant. So, going back to that first point, accepting Allah as master and accepting self as slave. Right? Like I was saying earlier, that means that the master calls the shots, right? And the slave doesn't do what he wants. The slave does what his master wants. Right? So that's the first point. Now, what about the guidance? So we talked about this neighborhood from Oprah, right? But what about the other things that we think about and contemplate in our life, right? Should I wear hijab or should I not wear hijab? Right? If I say Bismillah on this piece of meat, does it become halal for me or not? Right? If, I'm trying to understand more about madahib and schools of thought, for example, right? Do I see schools of thought as divisive or inclusive, or what? How do I make this? Well, anytime you ask one of these questions, right? Is wearing hijab bettering myself or not better, right? When you get to the point where it's like, well, I think this. Well, I think that. Of course, we are meant to be critical thinkers, right? But the point is why isn't the first question we're asking is, what does the master want? Right? If I say to myself, my New Year's resolution is, instead of eating 2 pork hot dogs a year, I'm going to eat 1 pork hot dog a year. Is that going to make me significantly healthier? Is 2 pork hot dogs hellfire and 1 pork hot dog is Allah forgives that one? No. Why are we not eating pork? Because the master said so. Doesn't matter how many hot dogs. Right? Allah is Al-Ghafur Rahim. Allah forgives every sin except shirk. So why are we contemplating and debating whether 1 hot dog or 2 hot dog? Why are we debating this or that? What does the master want? Because the minute I bring my own ego into this, that's where the confusion starts. So may Allah make us people who accept Allah as master and accept ourselves as slaves, as His slave. And may Allah also help us to recognize that guidance is only beneficial to those who accept that we are the slaves and Allah is master. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. So, let's talk about application, right? How do we recognize, how do we make ourselves more able to understand what our role is as servant of Allah, right? Because it's easy for us to say Allah is Al-Ghafur, Ar-Rahim, right? We have so many verses in the Quran that tell us what His attributes are, right? But what we forget is, okay, great. So Allah is this. Okay, hey, can you deal that next hand of poker, please? Right? Okay, Allah is all merciful, all kind, yet still forgive me. Okay, let me continue to eat that pork hot dog, like I was saying earlier, right? How do we understand now how Allah, being who He is, impacts us and what we do? That's the next question, right? So the first advice that I give to myself first and foremost, and to us today, inshallah, is dhikr, right? Remembrance of Allah. There is a hadith from Muslim that says that the most beloved of your names to Allah are Abdullah and Abdurrahman, right? So, meaning if you're going to name your child a certain name, right? The most beloved names to give your children are Abdullah and Abdurrahman. Why? Because the word abd, right? Servant of, right? So that every time you say my name, it's a constant reminder, right? Of who I am. Yes, I am me, but I'm not Fir'aun. Ana rabbukum al-a'la, right? I am the Lord Most High, right? Or in another verse in the Quran, he's talking to his chiefs and his higher up people, and he says, I know no better entity worthy of worship except myself, for you, right? We're not saying that's who I am, right? I'm not Fir'aun, a'udhu billah. I'm not these people that let their ego go to the maximum and think that they're something that they're not, right? I am Abdullah, a servant of Allah. And some easy ways to do this dhikr, right, is also, obviously, to remember the 99 names of Allah, right? And one of them is the example of naming our children these names, but also to look at how to protect ourselves against the things, the forces at work that are also trying to confuse us of recognizing what our place is as servants to Allah, right? Obviously, our environment being one, and the other being shaitan, right? May Allah protect us from him. So, quickly, before, I know we're out of time, so quickly I'll just say, your 3 quls are like the best form of seeking protection, right? So, obviously, Surah Ikhlas, Qul Huwallahu Ahad, it's reminding us again of who Allah is, so that we remind ourselves of who we are, right? And then the Surah Falaq is talking about seeking refuge in Allah from forces at being that are in our environment, right? So we're talking about like envy, right? When you're envying someone, you're wishing that you had something that they have, right? You wish for them not to have what they have and for you to have it instead. Or for someone else to have it instead, right? That's what envy is, right? Those are forces from other, people seeing what other people have and wanting this and maybe even wishing harm against someone or wishing ruin against someone. That comes from forces outside, right? Surah Nas is talking about the harm from within, right? قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ مَلِكِ النَّاسِ إِلَهِ النَّاسِ مِنْ شَرِّ الْوَسْوَاسِ الْخَنَّاسِ, the whispering, right? الَّذِي يُوَسْوِسُ فِي صُدُورِ النَّاسِ, right? In the bosom, right? The thing that affects us from within. And lastly, I'll just close with this, that there's a beautiful reminder in Surah Nas, in the words that Allah uses, right? In Surah Falaq, Allah just says, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ. He uses the word Rabb. But in Surah Nas, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ مَلِكِ النَّاسِ إِلَهِ النَّاسِ. Right? And so a simple translation of this is, Allah is saying, قُلْ أَعُوذُ, seek refuge, right? In the master of people, the king of people, and then the deity, right? The God of people, so to speak, right? So, when you look at it, Allah is also humbling mankind and saying that, for example, if you were a servant to your master on some sort of farm and something goes wrong or whatever, who do you go to? The master. Master, help me. Right? This is happening, that's happening, provide for me, help me, do this for me, protect me. Right? What if the master can't help you? Who does he go to? The governor, the mayor, right? The president of the United States. Great. What if he can't help you? Right? Go to the king, the ruler, the emperor. Right? And what if you're suffering from a drought that only came from the creator of that drought? Who do you go to? Who does the king go to? Allah. Right? The Lord, the deity. Right? So Allah is saying, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ. I am the master of mankind. That's not good enough? I am the king of mankind. That's not good enough? Right? I am the deity, the entity worthy of worship of mankind. Now what am I trying to tell you? Right? Seek refuge in me from this. Right? So, inshallah, we keep Allah's attributes on our tongue in dhikr. And may Allah help us to recite the 3 quls as protection for ourselves and also as a reminder for us to remember and accept Allah as our master and to accept us as His servant, as well as for us to recognize that guidance only comes from those who accept ourselves as servants to Allah. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحش إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. إن الله يعمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحش والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. وأقيموا الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله.